Okay, we're good.
Yay! Thanks for joining me, Chrissy. This is the first time we're doing this. This is not scripted. Chrissy has no idea the kinds of questions I'm going to ask her. But I think it'll be important, Christy, for you to tell everyone who you are, what you do, the choir we sing together in, because that's, the framing around this conversation is that we've known each other for a long time. Christy is a fierce soprano singing somebody. And the people who don't need to know you need to know you. So if you
Well,
could briefly.
yes, and you definitely have to do the same thing. And I mean, if you couldn't tell from that laugh, that is a tenor right there. Tenor of America. Okay, so I'm Christie McKinney, and do you want me to talk about like when I sang in Essence, or I guess I should introduce Essence first?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. So there we go. So Eric, you and I sang together in this choir called Essence of Joy. It's a curricular choir at Penn State, where we both went for our undergrads. And I was in the choir. It's a choir that sings music from the African and African American tradition, conducted by Dr. Anthony Leach. And now we have continued to sing together because shortly after I left the undergraduate choir, an alumni group was started. And so we have been singing together basically since you graduated.
Yes.
Of course, I knew who you were. I knew who you were before you graduated because nobody could watch an Essence of Joy concert and not see Eric Williams on stage.
Yeah.
But it's okay. So we got really close just singing over time over the past, I don't want to guess. When did you graduate?
2014.
2014. So we've had, oh my gosh, 7 years singing together
Yeah,
now.
yes, that's insane.
It is. And but it at the same time, it's like, is it only 7? Because I feel like you and I have been friends our entire lives. Like,
Seriously, that, legit
but
that.
that speaks to the bond, that speaks to the bond that singing together and like having really important conversations about our lives together does.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
and currently I am the board chair of the alumni group. And you are also on the board.
Yeah.
And so that's another way that we both kind of support this work that we love.
Hmm.
Um, and in my like other life outside of our volunteer singing stuff, I work for an organization called Chorus America, and we're really yes, I know, I love Chorus America too. That's a whole nother podcast, but
Yes.
it's it's a great intersection having Essence of Joy alumni singers as a nonprofit chorus in the US that gives to our community and serves our community, and also do that work professionally. So with my job, so that's kind of what I do during
The
the
boss
day.
woman, Christie McKinney, who I'm obsessed with. Just-
It's a mutual admiration
Yeah.
situation. 100%.
No truer words. Thank you for that context, Christy. So as she mentioned, we both graduated from Penn State. We both were also music majors,
Yes,
which was
true.
interesting to find out.
And
Uh,
music teachers.
and music teachers because we're like the same person. And so I am Eric Williamson, if you don't know me, and I am a public school teacher in Brooklyn, New York. I also am a conductor with the Grammy Award-winning Brooklyn Youth Chorus, and I'm also the R&R chair for New York ACDA Diversity and Inclusion. So I'm just doing all the things, but
All the leadership things. All the leadership things.
all the things. And, Essence of Joy Alumni Singers is a choir that I love so much, not only because of the musical excellence that Dr. Leach provides for us as a Black queer man who's been a titan in music education and choral education and church music and all the things. He's everything, but also the community that he's nurtured for people like Christy and me to go out into the world and bring it to other people. And I thought we've been talking about having this conversation just about race and what it means to be a singer in Essence of Joy, a predominantly white choir led by a Black music educator who is Dr. Leach that only sings African and African American music, sacred and secular. Um, because white supremacy is real, and we saw this week with the storming of the Capitol that it's not going anywhere anytime soon. And within the choral community, with both of our work in the nonprofit sector with Chorus America and ACDA and Brooklyn Youth Chorus and EOGIS as well, that the choral community hasn't really scratched the surface with these conversations the way that we kind of feel it should. And so we're gonna just kind of hop right into it because white people love singing black music.
Correct.
And they don't, I've been in these spaces and we've been in choirs where people don't understand what that necessarily means.
Yeah.
So I guess, Christy, my first question for you is, why sing black music? Why sing, music by African American composers? Why sing music by African composers and African music? In our experience of Essence of Joy and the alumni singers, this is what we do. But, for you as a white person, why sing black music?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I've thought a lot about it as I've had an opportunity to talk to, people at Penn State and in the broader community about why choirs like Essence of Joy matter. And from the intellectual standpoint, it's part of the American story. Like we can't ignore that we have African Americans here that were brought here not of their own volition and like terrible circumstances, and that is part of our American history. So recognizing that African music has been in the United States, since it was forcibly brought, is an important thing for us to recognize in our own history, and all of the aspects of that, the good and the bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but more than that, it's just like, it's almost like asking the same question, like, why study Bach? Well, Bach is not American either. So like, if we're only talking about like American music or, a specific type of music, that's not a music education I'm interested in. I'm a whole person with a lot of intersecting identities and like a lot of intersecting interests. And I want those to be broad and to be able to feel like I'm learning about cultures other than my own that broaden my horizons about the rest of the world, and to do it with purpose and with integrity and to lift up those other cultures. And that's a huge part of like what we have talked about so many times about, doing it with respect and doing your research and trying to do it. It's not like we say on our work team a lot, it's not about being right, it's about getting it right. And that's how I think about approaching specifically performance practice. But it's an important question, and it's as vital and integral to understand why you learn about music from other cultures as it is to understand how to do it well.
Yes. Oh, there's so many things I loved from what you said, Christy. And the reason why I asked that question is because for me, there's a very different reason. There's
Sure.
a lot of similarities and crossover, but for me, our entry points are different. So for me, the reason why I sing black music is because it's a part of who I am and my culture. So there's a sense of belonging, and you talked about like uplifting the culture, and for me, there's kind of like this innate responsibility or calling I have to uplifting and preserving black music and African American traditions and things of that nature. So my entry point is slightly different, but the similarities in it is it requires the same amount of study and respect that would say a Bach or a classical musician. And we're both, classically trained, so like you get it. And
Yeah.
I think Essence of Joy provided us that context and that opportunity to actually do that, to study it with the utmost attention and respect and acknowledgement of the complexity of the music, that is not just this surface level fun music that a lot of people kind of like throw around with black music, with like gospel and jazz and even music by classical black composers that create music. So that was just the why is always an important question for me, because in our community everyone's why is different.
Yeah.
And it's something that we don't necessarily get to explore that much, you know. Um, and that kind of brings me to my next question, because you also talked about respecting the music and the culture and the people. And I wonder if you can just tell us a little bit more of like, because you sing Black music and you have this affinity for it, what ways do you show respect and honor to the music, the culture, and to the people? As someone who almost in a sense could be called a cultural bearer, as someone who is singing this music within this context under the leadership of Dr. Leach, who is a Black teacher and educator who is teaching and sharing this rich music with predominantly white singers. What ways do you feel like that you continue that respect and honor for the music, the culture, and the people?
Yeah. It's a really important question. And I think the thing that you said about culture bearers is really important because um you know, but because it's about authentic sources, right? Like you have a responsibility to get it right. So that means that the way that you are absorbing information should be from an authentic source, and a culture bearer is one of those sources. So we have been blessed to have Dr. Leach as a conductor and as an educational mentor for both of us for so long. And so that means that the gift that he is giving us is as a culture bearer is an authentic representation of the music. So, you know, of course, as music educators who are trained to like learn and do at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
by just ourselves singing the music, we are learning how to also authentically ask students to sing the music. But you know, but if we didn't have that first source culture bearer, we would have to go to another first source type of research material,
Say that.
because when you don't have somebody who can tell you, you have to look for it written, or you have to look for video material that is authentic. And so I'm not sure I would call myself a culture bearer. I feel I have a lot of cultural knowledge about this, but and I feel like I can authentically give it to other people and help them authentically approach it. But that doesn't, like, if I had somebody who was learning from me, that's not enough of a resource material for them. They still have a
Mm-hmm.
responsibility as other white folks to go to first source material. And so I think that's the most important thing. You know, second to that is like something else I think you were talking about with, you know, we as a choral field was this trend that still continues, that, you know, like if you want to have a piece of gospel music or music representing African American tradition on your program, you put it at the end. It's the big flashy end of the piece to make everybody feel good, but that ignores the story that
Mm-hmm.
this music unbearably brings with it. Like, you have to recognize that, like all music, there is a story behind the lyrics and how it was written and why it was important. And maybe it was written for something, some occasion that is significant. And it's our job to honor those stories by making sure that they are clearly told in our presentation and in our teaching you know, whatever selection of music we're looking at. Um, so we have a responsibility to uphold that and to share the story again in the same
Yeah.
way that we look at any piece of repertoire.
Mm-hmm. I love that, and I definitely didn't mean to call you a culture bearer. And I realized that I said that. I'm like, ah, shit, I'm gonna have to clean this up because like, so my follow up question was gonna be like, what, how, like, I don't have to ask it now, but I was gonna say like, what makes you think you are a culture bearer with this music? Because I framed, I was like, oh, I have to retract this some way, but you already answered
No,
it.
we don't have to retract it.
Yeah.
This is the thing we're leaning into and like trying to model in this experience, is like, you don't have to say the right thing all the time. Like, I
Mhm.
know you, you know me, we love each other. We're assuming the best of each other in this
Yeah.
conversation. And so like we just fix it and move on. And that
Yeah.
is a great model to put out into the world about
Yeah.
how how to do this, not be afraid to make mistakes. We just continue moving forward.
Yes, and it's I'm so glad that you're like, well, I'm not a culture bearer because my whole thing is words are really important and they carry a lot of meaning. So for me to impose that on you and me knowing like that's not right, she's actually not a culture bearer of this black music.
No, no, not today, Eric.
So
Not today.
not
Not
today.
any other day. Not
Yeah.
any other day.
I love it. But it also it kind of I'm gonna pat myself on the back because these questions are just effortlessly like tying together really well. Um,
Yeah.
and so we talk about because what you were kind of alluding to in terms of like first person contact and always going back to the source really kind of speaks to this cultural affinity versus appropriation. Um,
Yeah.
and I know I've been in many spaces traveling with Essence of Joy, less with EOs. I'm pretty sure people have said it as well, but they see this group of predominantly white kids wearing this kente cloth, singing spirituals, singing gospels, sometimes doing choreography. And my whole question that I always have in the back of my mind is, what if like a black person or a person of color approaches one of the white members of the choir and accuses them of being a cultural appropriator? Like, how would you respond in that moment of like, how would you consider yourself a cultural appropriator in that instance? Would you not? How would you respond if someone goes to Essence of Joy performance, they see us singing this spiritual, they see us doing this gospel piece, they see us doing choreography, they see us wearing the kente.
Yeah.
How would you respond to them and that accusation of calling you an appropriator?
Yeah. And I'm going to start by saying this particular question took me a long time to figure out for myself. And I will say, like, my language and understanding about it has only sharpened in the last few years, but I've been asking myself this question since we were in undergrad. Because like, how do you explain to somebody that you're in this choir but you're a white person?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
like, and I had to answer that question, and I've gotten better at it over time because I've practiced it,
Mhm.
like, because I have thought about it and read about it and came to understand more about my role and like what it means. Um, and also better understood what it means to appropriate. And I think this is also something that's kind of evolving, but
Mhm.
I think there are a couple really important points that I've learned, especially in the last few years from working with some of Chorus America's amazing board members, is that it matters about permission. Do you have permission to do the thing you're doing? And are you doing it with respect? And are you doing it with the excellence it deserves?
Mm.
And so, permission, like, I think, just using the scenario you outlined where I'd be wearing a kente as part of a concert, which I've done many times. Do I have permission to wear it? Dr. Leach standing in front of us and conducting and also wearing that kente gives the permission kind of by association.
Mhm.
And am I wearing it with respect and the dignity that it deserves? I definitely try to do that. And now I'm forgetting the third thing that I said.
Hold
I,
up. Permission. Wow,
with
I just
respect.
forgot it too.
It's okay, but I think we kind of covered the big stuff there because taking without permission is a violation, right? Anytime. And it is a violation musically, taking without having permission to use it and then benefiting, yourself from the usage without permission again, like whether that's financially or in some type of social context. If
Mhm.
I benefit from it without, again, like without permission to do so, that is another violation. And so, I think there's a lot of really good research you can look up. There are books written about cultural appropriation. There's research about it, and I think there's going to continue to be more research that comes out, trying
Mhm.
to help us provide context and give us words to talk about this with. But I think those are the two big things. And so knowing, I feel a sense of peace about wearing a kente in a concert because Dr. Leach is there with me. He's given me permission. It is part of authentically representing the music
Mhm.
to bring in a cultural, significantly a significant piece of visual art of a culture while we are vocally representing that art. But if I were to take that kente with me to the grocery store, so like I could pat myself on the back and feel cool, that's different, right? Dr. Lee should not give me permission to wear that kente to the grocery store. So,
Yes.
um, so I think that's how I think about it.
I love that. And this is also something I'm still thinking about a lot now. The alumni singers do not wear the kente, so this is
Right.
more like a thing with the resident choir. And for me, like I agree with the permission in that, because we have Dr. Leach and he is the artistic lead of this choir, he was giving us that permission to wear these garments and sing this music with him and kind of like share in this musical moment. The dissonance for me always occurred in the intention of the singer. So
Yeah.
we're a part of. So for me, I feel like it goes to like an individual level of like where each singer is in terms of like, are you participating in affinity or appropriation? Because I feel like some members, especially more so like in the resident choir, because they were specifically wearing the kente. I would think about some of my peers and like what their intention was and how they even viewed the music, even though they were invited and had permission to participate in this cultural exchange and sharing of Black music with the larger Penn State community and beyond. I would always kind of feel uncomfortable about their intention or their understanding of it, since we've never really had that conversation of like, this is what this means. This is why we're wearing a kente. It's something like we kind of just did. So I feel like the appropriativeness of it comes on an individual basis, because I feel like some of my peers benefited from those musical experiences, but they didn't necessarily have the integrity behind it to truly respect or understand what they were doing, which is kind of like, okay, I'm gonna put on this kente. I'm gonna like read this sheet music and sing this spiritual. I'm going to scream through this gospel and like this is a fun piece. And so that's always kind of been my personal dissonance with it, because again, the reason why for me putting on this kente is very different. It felt very like a homecoming for me of like, this is my culture, this is my pride. There's a lot of pride for me in singing spirituals and having that connection to my ancestry. Like, I mean, both of my grandmothers who are still alive, thank God, have vivid memories of picking cotton. So like there's just this very direct correlation culturally for me in singing this music, and why Essence of Joy was like a healing space for me, because the music spoke to a real part of my identity and who I am as a person. And
Yeah.
having someone like Dr. Leach, who has the lived experience of, similar to many people in my family, just regarding racism in this country and coming up through the civil rights and things of that nature, is very real and very fresh. And
Yeah.
it was an exciting moment for me as someone who was coming up as a music major, to have this other side of the coin that was basically like shit on by others as and viewed as like less valuable and less excellent and less important. And Dr. Leach changed that narrative by being all the more excellent and all the more intentional
Yes.
about teaching us, the artful masterpiece that is Black music in America, and how complex and nuanced it was.
Yeah.
Um, so
You
that
know,
permission piece always just, yeah, there's
yeah,
some layers in that.
I feel like what this brings me to is how much context matters. Like how much this is like a great example of why it matters to tell the story of things behind these symbols and pieces of music, right? And like if we had done a better job as like a curricular choir and even alumni group now, I feel like we're highlighting some work we could do of being better about telling these stories and providing this context. Because like I'm thinking about what we do with our programs right now, and we definitely don't do as much as we could. And so I think what we're diving into is an opportunity for us to improve the context that we're providing.
Mm,
And like if we build this structure in, it is by default also educating our singers, but we can also be purposeful about that and more
mhm,
purposeful about that. Because you're totally right. Like it does matter how how the person who is wearing the symbol perceives what that means, right? And we don't want anybody to be wearing it who doesn't understand the context of what it is. And
Mhm.
so and that goes just as much for a musical offering as it does for this very important piece of cloth that represents a culture.
And I think, you know, off of that, another thing that I always, in terms of the affinity versus appropriation, I think a lot of the white members kind of relied heavily on the fact that Dr. Leach gives them permission to participate in this, that they kind of negate all the other work and attention to detail
Yeah.
required to still like value and respect it as much. Like, yes, it's almost like, the the joke of like, oh, he's invited to the cookout type of thing. With that invitation comes a responsibility, and I feel like the responsibility pieces always didn't connect. And Dr. Leach also isn't perfect. This is also partially his fault as well, just as a leader and not providing all of that, the full context of it beyond like the doing of the act. So I feel like especially now in the current time that we're in, where everything is just so blatant and out there, I think that intentionality and attention to detail is more important now than ever, because it's so easy to slip into that gray area of like appropriation and culture vulturing,
Yeah.
where that it's just too easy. It's way too easy
Yeah.
to be in that. So I think it's important for us to be bold and vocal and clear about, this is our why, and this is why this matters. This is why I value this. This
Yeah.
is why I honor this invitation to participate. And of course, we love the music, and people love music everywhere. But I feel like, for me, it's important to go beyond just the dots and notes on the pages, because this is lived experience. This is years and years of stories and struggle and pain and joy and celebration, all of those layers of like what it means to be human. I know when I sing this music, it kind of just comes out from my experience,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. But I think I want to say, as a white person in this conversation, like it is, Dr. Leach is an educator, so that's one piece of it. Like, he's teaching us, but it's also like my job as the white person in this space to like do this work. Like, I have to recognize that it's my job. He is surviving in a predominantly white space, even within our choir. And so like, he doesn't need to do the extra work. Like, I need to do that as the white person. And if I can't do that, like, I don't have to be in this space, like, that's not really okay. I can advocate my responsibility, but like, if I'm choosing to walk into a cultural space that is not mine and I need to do it with respect, that means that I have to do the work and like do the research and understand that space as much as I can that I'm walking into. That's our job as white singers in this choir. And I have to say, I feel like, especially in the alumni group, our folks who show up are really attentive to that, and they try to be, and they continue, and we all continue to get better at doing it. And that's only in the space of grace that the members of color give us, to
Yeah.
like continue to make mistakes and continue to ask dumb questions, or questions that we think are dumb, and be received with love,
Yeah.
because that's like, the amount of grace that white members of the choir are given by members of color is a beautiful thing about our community.
I second that. And I feel like, to your point, I feel like our organization and our choir really evolved when we went to South Africa in 2016. There were just so many different meaningful conversations that were had amongst the members, and our shared experiences of being in South Africa and singing African American music, and seeing the South Africans interact with the white members and with the black members, and all of those different intersections were all happening really fast at once. But we but we all like really came back with something like meaningful, and I personally could feel and also hear how it influenced our sound and our bond as individuals. Like, once we came back to the States and did gigs after, there was just like a heightened understanding around what we do and why what we do as this interracial choir is important, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And that totally just speaks to like the length of the journey, right? This is not a destination. This is a process we have all agreed to by being in this choir for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue to learn and do better every day, every day.
Yes. And it's so funny because you like without even being asked, you answered like my last question, which was how can we avoid appropriation and truly live in affinity? And like you just kind of you just kind of was like boom, 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 boom. I already know what questions you're gonna ask me because I've met you before and no, it's amazing. I'm here for it.
Yeah,
Well, yes. Yes.
this was great. I could
It
do
really
this all
was.
day with you.
Yes.
In fact, this is all we do all the time when we hang out.
Yes,
I
literally
mean,
that.
I have to say I think this opportunity to have conversations like this every time I see like a member of our group is like the biggest gift. You know,
Mhm.
it is one of the most beautiful things about our community is that we're willing to continue showing up for each other in this way and trying to do better and be better all the time
Mhm.
and challenge each other, you know, and call each other in about doing better and being better and having these hard conversations. I feel like I'm so much more able to sit in discomfort and be okay with it because of all the practice that we do.
Well, you're just next level, Christie McKinney. You are definitely the model of like get your life and this is the work and it's uncomfortable and I don't like it, but I understand the necessity around it and just to see your evolution around like being intentional and like always going back to your why is really powerful. Like that is like I don't even know what word I'm looking for, but it has something to do with just like evolution, but also revolution, like
Yeah.
all of that.
Yeah.
This is how we progress
Yes.
as humans, and like out of this the systemic pressures of racism. Like this is how you do it with like this constant attention to your why and to like making the world better and shifting out of that place of privilege and power to like I need to get this together and I need to bring these people along with me. This
Yeah.
is trash. This is wrong. And no,
This
it's
is
literally
very
that
this is a
energy.
very real portrait of me right now.
Like this
But Eric,
energy.
it's only because it's only through like years of practice, right? Like nobody suddenly like one day is like I suddenly feel comfortable having uncomfortable conversations, you know, or conversations that might make me uncomfortable, you know, like nobody is just good at that right away, right? Like we are having this conversation right now with this level of ease because we have had 100 conversations before
I
it where
literally
and it wasn't all like easy when we started. Like I remember having a phone call with Mel one time where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how this is going to go. I love Eric. I don't want to offend Eric. I don't want to say anything wrong. I was like tiptoeing. I think I sweat the whole conversation that we
no.
but like look at you, you're like a teddy bear. You know, like what did I have to fear? My own insecurity about but you know, and that's real because it's based in not wanting to harm, right? And that is a beautiful thing about people's hearts, that they don't want to harm other people, but
Mhm.
also by like not having the conversation is doing some harm. So you know, there's a balance there, right? And you just gotta lean into it because it just takes practice over and over and over again. And that's why we can sit here and be real with each other in this real
Mhm.
way in a time where we got to talk about white supremacy in a very open and clear way. And you only can do that by practicing.
Yes. And this also reminded me of a conversation I had with Kay. I think it was I'm pretty sure it was K Mao. But we
Mhm.
were talking about no mirrors and she was saying how she always felt uncomfortable with that line. I never knew that my skin was too black. I never knew that my nose was too flat. And just like how specific it was. And she was basically saying, you know, how well I'm not black and I feel really uncomfortable saying this in this space. And it just makes me think like I don't know where I was going with this comment, but it just made me kind of like I think these conversations are important because people are continually questioning whether or not they should sing certain pieces. That's where I was
Yeah.
going with it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and like, should we not? And like, I don't have the answer to it either because I know certain pieces are like so stark and so there's a certain feeling that comes with these pieces. Like even though a white person saying I never knew my skin was too black, them even doing that with like other people of color is a statement, you know. But it goes back again to like, what is your intention of singing this music? What is your why? And why I would be comfortable seeing that versus like seeing an all white choir do that piece of hell no. Um,
Right.
but it's all like the nuances and complexities and layers of your why that for me always makes it appropriate and
Right.
not appropriative.
Right. Let
Um,
me put a fine point on something you just said because I think it's so brilliant, right? Like nothing about us without us, right? That's part of like
yes.
understanding your source material and doing your research. So like even if you have an all white choir, if you do your research and do it respectfully and you talk to people you need to talk to, or you read the things you need to read, or you get permission from the people you need to get permission from to represent something authentically, that's you're doing the work. Like that's what the work looks like. And like we talk about doing the work all the time. And like that's a great example with came out because and we encounter those types of things all the time. Like as white people, not all words are for us, right? And we have to understand that. And that's okay. But there are spaces like when we're performing and we have a lyric that is in a piece and we're given permission to sing that piece. We're singing it with respect. We're singing it with others around us who help bring context. That's where it becomes, instructive to an audience and appropriate to share and educational and hopefully all of those things instead of harmful to people who might be receiving it in the audience. And
I
that's what matters.
we need a T-shirt. Nothing about us without us. It needs to be
Yeah.
a T-shirt. I'm gonna talk to Kiana. She's gonna make some T-shirts. We're gonna get some hats, some hoodies. Um,
I'm gonna give respect where it's due here. That phrase came to me from Jane Ramsey Miller, who's the artistic director of Gala Choruses, and
mm,
she and I had another conversation where we were unpacking some things, and she said that to me in a different context, and it just like it was a space where I'd thought about it 100 times in
mm.
terms of essence of joy, but I had not thought about it in this other context, and it was like another learning moment for me, and that's just we just got to continue to have these learning moments.
Yeah, and I'm finding now that because what I love about Dr. Leach is a lot of times he just lets the music speak for
Yeah.
itself. And like I am obsessed with that model as an educator of just experiential learning and like an
Yeah.
immersive context, especially when it comes to Black music. Some of it you just have to experience, especially like gospel. Like you need to be in a Black church. You just need to be on a pew. You next to an
Yes.
organ. You just need, and
Because
and
that's where it's born. That's most
that's
authentic.
that's where it lives. And I'm finding now I'm challenging to an extent. I'm challenging this notion of just experiencing it from the standpoint of us now living in this age where everything are just like little snippets of video footage, whether it's on TikTok, whether it's on Instagram, that
Yeah.
there needs to be more framing around things because people are quick to take things out of context that is
Yes.
dangerous and toxic and not helpful to the work, to the people, to the culture. Like people are just so quick to cancel this and cancel that, and like there's just never any context. It's just like, here is this video of this predominantly white choir singing this, and it's just like, well, what is the context around it? Like, and people are just like quick to like go with that.
Yeah.
I don't have a fully developed answer around it, but I feel like, given the nature of our culture now and the way that we perceive information and experiences, this experiential kind of thing is not serving us right now.
Yeah.
Where we're in like a time in our history where there it needs to be more conversations and framing around things
Yeah.
because and our attention span is also way shorter too. So like, there's all these things working against us in opposition to like what the intention is right now. Um,
Yeah.
I'm
You
gonna
know,
put a personal pin for myself on that because that's something that needs to be revisited. for several reasons.
So I wanna dig into this a little bit, even though like we're way past whatever time we thought
Yeah.
we were gonna be. So like, so the way that I think about that is like zooming out to all the isms, right? Like you and I, we talk a lot about racism and we've talked about other isms, but like when you think about like context and isms and how those things interplay, like when you're taking something out of context or there's no context provided, you're assuming a context. And so like I as a white person who is, hetero and who has certain like all these different privileges, I so like I'm assuming the context that lives inside this
Yes.
body and this
Yes.
brain and my set of privileges. And so anybody who's viewing stuff without context or hearing things without context is doing the same because we all live in this structure, we live in this world. And so there's always a context, right? And is it provided and you're absorbing what the context is supposed to be, or am I applying my own context to something?
Mhm.
And like that's totally going to change how I interpret something. And so that's where I get to when I'm thinking about this, is because all these isms are intersectional and all of my identities are intersectional, and they create this person in this body that experiences this world when I go out into it. And so like that's my context, and I apply it to everything unless I'm purposefully given something else, right? It's the
Mhm.
default.
Yes.
So in order for me to see outside of my context, I have to know what the other context is supposed to be.
Literally that, because the biases, will always, just influence any experience, like fill in the blank, like that, just like unconscious and conscious bias is just always ever present. And
Yeah.
you're always elevating and challenging our consciousness to have that awareness that that those things are at play. So I just,
Yeah.
Christy, you're the one.
With it. We're with it. I love it. I love
Yes.
it. We just have conversations like this all day.
Literally, literally, we really could do that,
We could.
but
We
then
have.
nothing else will get done. Nothing
Yeah.
else will get done. Yay!
I'm
This was
so glad that you're doing this. Thank you for taking your energy and using it in this way, and um and like investing into our choir in this way. I think it's so important, and also like investing into the choral field in this way, because if there's anything that I have learned since graduating from Penn State and going out into the choral field as an adult, it is like how special our community is, that we keep it real and we're talking about these things and it matters, and that's why it stays relevant to the people
yes,
who are participating. And there's just so few spaces like that in the choral world, and I feel like this is a real gift that this was your idea, when we were working on some virtual choir projects in the winter earlier, and it was, I think, one of the best things to come out of that project and that conversation. And so thank you for investing in instead of pulling back and
yeah.
when it would have been easy to.
And I really appreciate you saying that, because there has been this huge over it in my spirit regarding the choral field. Like, I am so over it, and like all the Facebook groups and the foolishness that I see nonstop and the various choir director choral this choral that I've reached a place of just like being over it and like not wanting to deal or hear from people. But then I think about, the experience and privilege I have of being a part of this very
Mhm.
niche group of singers, and thinking about like how we can kind of lead a new charge in way, because just like you said, like people don't have the access to these different individuals of varying experiences. Like, so many choirs are made up of different people. A lot of them, some of them are all professional hired singers. Some of them are, insular to a church community. Some of them are like, they're just all different kind of choirs that are just very homogenous in terms of their population and experiences of people.
Yeah.
That, there's all but so much you can do, even geographically. There's all but so much you can do in terms of these really nuanced conversations that need multiple perspectives and experiences. So when you think about a choir like Eogis, where it's literally like anyone who has been at Penn State that sang an Essence of Joy, you got people all over the country, international, different nationalities, different backgrounds, different professions. They're not all professional singers by any means, but we all operate in excellence. So like that just provides us with more of an opportunity um, to have these conversations go somewhere. Like
Yeah.
they don't go anywhere in these other spaces, and I just be frustrated. I'm just like, all right, I've heard this already. I've heard this. We've had this conversation. We always stop right here, and I'm just like, this is a waste of my time. you know?
Yes. Yes. And I so appreciate and see like, and I can't experience, but I can see the cost that that takes. And so I want to honor how much you invest into our community and acknowledge the cost that that is asking of you, but also say like how, I mean, and I know you know because we talk all the time and I text you this all the time, but you are so loved and so valued, and that is true for all of the singers in our group. And I interact with you more, so I tell you more, but it's true. Like we have to lift each other up and appreciate that, this choir is formed out of a need in the world. It wouldn't exist if it wasn't required.
Mm-hmm.
So, or it would exist differently and it wouldn't have been formed in the way that it was.
Yeah.
So we have to acknowledge that there's a cost with that. And hopefully I actually feel like our Essence of Joy alumni singers is part of restorative justice for us, and hopefully it serves you in that way, because if it's not, those are spaces we should be leading
Mm-hmm.
to.
I feel that. I honestly honestly, for me, this never feels like work. It just kind of feels like this is what you do with your family type of thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like our most volatile conversations were my favorite conversations.
Yes, I
They were,
totally
like,
agree.
honestly, like, and the way that you just framed it as like this is like restorative practice, it really is exactly that. And I feel like, when I think about all of like the choir fallouts and like boom, like volcanic eruptions of conversations of
Yeah,
craziness
yeah.
in the world and craziness at Penn State specifically, it's like I don't how do I want to say this, but it's like almost like we were cutting the fat of a lot of stuff and getting down to like the real nutrients of what Essence of Joy actually is.
Yeah.
And like for me, like it's literally restoration. Like things are being restored to like its purest form.
Yeah.
And like it is a rough process. Like, on the Bible it talks about being tried in the fire and like coming out as pure gold. Like it
Yeah.
feels like all of those things. Like, you have to go through that process, and it's hard. It's uncomfortable, and but it's necessary.
Yeah.
And I feel like the more of these hard conversations, fallouts happen, the stronger that the bonds are. I really feel, and the stronger we are, just like as a family and as a group of singers who come together. Like it makes it all the more potent, and people feel that when we sing. Like
Yeah.
it's not like they feel like if excuse the pun, but they feel the essence of joy like when we're
Yes.
up there, because they can tell like not only do we love this music, but we love each other. And y'all
Yeah.
going, we singing these songs, whether we are singing this acapella spiritual or we are clapping our hands singing this gospel number, like that joy and that intention is so present, and
Yes.
that bond, and like looking at, each other singing in the stands. I miss it so much. And like I hate COVID. Like this is stupid. I just want to holler with y'all at some churches.
Yes. Yes. And sit down and share some meals and have some just like unstructured time together.
Yes.
It's so important. And I feel like you really hit it when you talk about like the essence of joy. Like who knew that name continues to like grow and evolve inside me. And like I think about Jen Heller's kids who call us the joy people. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's it. That's it. Because like this is, like the way that we are joyful together, you and
Yeah.
me, like is the way that we all feel when we're together. And there is no joy that can replace like a choral community that sings together and that grows and learns together and challenges each other. Like it's a magical space where
Well, and I wish that, not that other choral communities don't have that bond. I'm sure they do, but I wish that that intention of community building was like throughout the US,
yeah,
when it comes to like, I mean, there's a lot of intention behind putting on these conferences and concerts where people come together to sing, but
yes,
there's no work after that. I wish there was that same intention in the community, in the people, in the conversations. That's
yeah,
the energy we need, and people are yearning for it. Like, yes, of course, we love singing, we love being in a choir, we love sharing these songs and our gifts, but there's so much more before and after the actual performance happens. Like, the whole teaching philosophy of, teaching process versus product. Like,
yes,
the
yeah.
process is, that's the bread and butter. That's the
Yes,
bread
it
and
is.
butter.
Yes, it is. I love it. It's so true. It's so true.
So that's all I have. We could really go
Laid
on and
out-
on.
We just laid out like a whole educational philosophy. So hope everybody picked up on that. And take that to your classroom and your choir rehearsal.
Yes, my Venmo is Eric-Williamson-10. I also have Cash App, PayPal.
And you have a beautiful website. You and Kiana have beautiful websites now. So like go check that out because this man is a facilitator. You can hire him to do this with your
Yeah.
choir. He will make it better. Look at how we are. Look at how this is because Eric has facilitated this. So this is what it means to have people like Eric in your life. So check out his website.
Oh, thank you, Chrissy. And check out Christie McKinney taking over the world one chorus at a time.
You know how we do.
Also a boss lady who I'm obsessed with. So there's that. Get you a Christy and an Eric in your life. Shameless plug.
Honestly, like how do you do that? You just have these kinds of conversations a lot over and over and over.
It's crazy. We've really had so many conversations.
But
Like,
it's good. It's
it is
like
great.
this is the work, right? This
Yeah.
is the journey.
But I didn't even think about that. Like, just even thinking about like how long we've been singing together, like the amount of like conversations that we've had. Like, oh shoot, that got real. That got kind of real to me. Just kind of like, yeah, this did not happen overnight by any means.
No,
It,
no,
it speaks to relationships, and how important they are, especially with these conversations. And I think I was telling you before, like that's the root of my frustration is that because there's a lack of relationship when you're approaching these conversations, there's always a place where you have to kind of stop or it doesn't go beyond that because you don't know these people you're having a conversation with. People take things personal as humans do. Like we're all, sensitive and have emotions.
yeah.
So it always kind of stops there because of like those barriers of you not really knowing anyone. And that's where it loses the impact. And for me now, time is precious, and it's just, well, time has always been precious, but it's just like I'm not about to sit in nobody's 3-hour workshop where I don't know nobody for y'all to tell me the same shit that I done heard before.
Yeah.
Like, we get it. We get it.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Eric? I feel like what it comes down to is like, I trust you. Like, I didn't need to see the questions before today because I know that you would not do anything intentionally to hurt me. And I know that you know that I wouldn't do anything to intentionally hurt you. And so, like, we already have that trust. And that's why we're able to like jump in 10 feet deeper than like most other
True.
situations.
Message.
So do some trust falls and then jump in. You're ready to go.
Legit that. It's legit that simple, people. It's that simple, America.
Solved it.
Nailed it.
All right.
Yay.
I'm saying thank you. Thank you. I love you so much. And I truly very value you.
Yay.
Yay.
More to come. Excited. I'm super excited about this now. This was actual